Okay, folks, we're back again. First, I'm going to give you a couple of updates. First off, because of the confusions in the groups, the conflict paper, as I sent an email to everyone, will be delayed till next Tuesday. And so you're going to see on As You Learn, I'm going to be moving the dates downward a bit. It's all right. I don't know why it happened that way. I mean, As You Learn is, being pushed at 100%. So whatever the mail system went, had issues with, I don't care. And so we'll push this back another week for you to get into your groups. So conflict will be due, I believe, today's the 6th. It'll be the 13th. The next is on Thursday. I will not be here. I'm going to go see my dad, and they've got a hurricane down there too. So I'm, have a couple of things that I'll have to take care of. So maybe by tomorrow afternoon sometime, it might even be Friday, you'll get a video on the remaining part of this chapter on retailing. And so you won't have to sign on Thursday, and I'll finish it. I'll have a Panopto recording up, hopefully sometime tomorrow. And I'm in the middle of grading your tests, of course, and so I'll hopefully have those finished tomorrow afternoon as well. Okay, so I'm trying to get some of this off of me. So once again, as I've said, check your emails. Make sure that if you have any questions on your groups, because we're going full steam ahead, and I should see you. Those papers will be delayed until next Tuesday. Okay. All right. So we have finished discussions about basics of channels. We have talked about relationships and conflict and power. And now we're going to talk about the substance of organizations in the actual channel intermediaries. And so this chapter, what it does is it starts with retail. That glare is awful. Got it. All right. Okay. So, retail. Now, retailing, in the immortal words of Mark Twain, the reports of its death is somewhat exaggerated. Retailing is still as powerful as it ever was. The way in which the venue in which retailing has changed dramatically, of course, when you consider we're talking about the omni-channel as well, but the focuses and points and purposes of retailing still exist. And so, like everything, as I always say, I prefer to really start with definitions. What is the definition of retail? And so, Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines retailing as the activities involved in selling of goods to the ultimate consumers for personal and household consumption. And this is the core essence of retailing. It is for personal and household consumption. In a retailer, the buying is the ultimate consumer. And what is the difference? It always comes down to the buying motive of the individual purchasing an item. So if you go into an Office Depot and you purchase a computer for yourself to be used, let's say for your work here, that would be considered a retail sale. If you went in to purchase a computer for your own personal business to create a consulting service, that is not considered retail. That is considered a commercial sale. It is used in the purpose of creating another item available for consumption. And so remember this, the buying motive is what determines ultimately whether a good is a retail sale or not, okay? Retailing accounts for a substantial portion, I would say an enormous portion, of not only the United States, but the world economy as well. Now, retail establishments vary in size, ownership arrangements, breadth, depth, assortments. And so what we'll look at is a few of the major formats that we're all somewhat knowledgeable of. The first is the one that we've seen all our lives, is the supermarket. And a supermarket is basically a self-service store. In other words, we go in, we select the goods ourselves. They specialize in food retailing, but they change not only to food, but they have non-food items as well within given categories. The average number of items in a supermarket is around 150,000 SKUs, or sellable units. That's 150,000 different items that is in the supermarket. And it is amazing when you look at supermarkets, they exist many times on only 2% margin. And so if you think about it, with $1 million in sales, they only make 20 grand. But supermarkets survive on other ways. Every good supermarket, or let's say a successful one, survives on its delis, because the delis make unique goods, and those unique goods are charged more. That is why also every supermarket that is successful has its own meat market, and they cut their own meat, because quite simply, that's one of the ways that they make money. The margin on meat is generally somewhere 40%, whereas a prepackaged unit is somewhere around 2%. So that's how they survive. Now, they not only have private label merchandise, and so like the example of Walmart is Sam's Choice, but then there are also what are called hypermarkets and supercenters. And these are the items or locations that sell more than just the standard food retailing, okay? They branch out into other venues. And I think if you look at Walmart as the super center, for the lack of a better word, or the hypermarket, it gives you an idea that they can sell much more than you would think. Now, it's important also to understand that the hypermarket lives within a given venue of self-service as well. One of the reasons why Walmart isn't into the process of selling refrigerators and washers and those kind of things is quite simply it's out of the, in other words, self-service kind of category. And so anything all that it takes for you to do is to simply return it. Walmart really doesn't want to deal with it. And to their credit, it's probably the best thing that they can do. The next is warehouse clubs. And warehouse clubs have been around for a long time, and generally what they do is the warehouse club is built around targeting the small business. However, they do sell to consumers. Originally, if you wanted to join a Sam's Club, you actually had to be part of a business. And so if you, wherever you worked, you had to be able to say that you were working for this one location for you to go into a Sam's, because they sell in what is considered wholesale quantities at wholesale prices. So what does wholesale quantity mean? As I've talked before, you have to perform the channel function of breaking bulk so that you can receive that discount and store that, whatever that bulk is as well. And so when you go in to get toilet paper, you get, skids of toilet paper. I mean, enormous quantities, and you'd have to break them up. And so that's what a warehouse club is. They generally charge a membership fee, and that is significant in their revenue stream. And they, like I said, the other part of that is that they are membership clubs, and so they restrict the goods that they have to members as well. Now, a department store, I'm not even sure, in the last 20 years, we have probably seen the demise of what would be considered the department store. You might not even understand what the focus is, but the department store is organized into departments. And so if we were to look at Walmart, I think that's a very good category of way of understanding it. You have assortments in those given areas, and it's almost like their own little microcosms in each one of those. And usually they started out being general category, catalog kinds of sales things. The very first one, as a matter of fact, was F.W. Woolworth, and then came Sears, and they became the omnibus to anything that you would want, even personal financing. However, the fact is that their survival was around the malls, and as we can all know, I mean, the shopping mall as a shopping center has become passé, and especially in the last 20 years. So where it did have its day at one time, unfortunately, it no longer does. Now, specialty shops work and function on a narrow range of goods. They're equivalent to the single department of a department store, but in this very narrow department, they have a lot, okay? And so an example would be Foot Sloggers here in Boone, and their focus is on outdoor equipment. And you might be able to go to, oh gosh, the store downtown on King Street and get outdoor equipment because they have plenty there. But if you really want to get into the deep outdoor equipment, you'd go to Foot Sloggers because they would, they probably would have a much greater depth. And so that's what a specialty store has for you. But where do we classify Walmart? Is it a supercenter or a hypermarket or a supermarket? In the strictest sense, it's probably what we would call a discount store, all right? And so a discount store is built on a very broad assortment. It's built on very low margins and very high turnover. And so they have toys and small appliances and packaged goods, those kind of things. Do they have the broad assortment of a hypermarket? The terms are so close, it's hard to find exactly where one is versus the other. But if I were talking about the supermarket, I would probably consider Publix or Harris Teeter. And then if I were talking about the discount store, I'd be thinking of Walmart. One of the other things about Walmart is that they do substantial grocery sales. But if you go into Walmart, they don't have the depth that a supermarket such as Harris Teeter would. I've said this before. I went in to count the number of mustards that Walmart had, and they had something like 15 to 20 different mustards in their categories. And I went to Harris Teeter, and they had 70 different types of mustards and varieties. And so there is the difference. And then, of course, convenience stores, which are generally located in rural residential areas. They usually have gas stations. They're built around convenience. And because they're built around convenience, they charge a premium for that convenience, all right? And so you will generally visit convenience stores when you are looking for impulse items or items of convenience. Generally, they have tobacco and newspapers and snacks and drinks. They're quick ways to satisfy that, and that quick convenience is the reason why they charge higher margins on other goods. It is why they'll sell a Coke for $2 that's not a liter, that's a 20 ounce, and you're perfectly willing to pay that $2 because it's right there and it's right in front of you. Or you could be like my brother and drive 10 miles down to the Walmart and get one out of the machine for 50 cents. But hey, that's my brother. What can I say? And then the last of this classification of types of retailers is what's considered the drugstore. Now, drugstores originally functioned as pharmacies. In other words, they passed out medicines, all right? However, as as they expanded in the number of things that they had for medicines, they also started carrying personal care products. And that expansion rapidly led itself to things such as hair color, and also things such as, you know, other women's fashion ideas, nail polishes, those kind of things. And then gradually, as the number of those stores like Walgreens expanded, they found that they had something like 4,000 stores. And so what they decided to do was turn themselves into semi-convenience stores, knowing that even if they charged an extra dollar for bread, consumers would be much more satisfied buying a dollar extra, spending another dollar for bread than going into the Walmart and having to go through that ultimately just to get another loaf of bread. And so if you go into a Walgreens now, you're going to find that they're stocked with seasonal goods. They're getting ready for autumn. They have food if you want it. They have all of those things there. And it basically grew from this beginning as a local pharmacy, and it spread from there. Walmart went the other direction. When they had their super centers, they decided to add pharmacies inside. Interestingly enough, I don't know if you knew this, but 20 years ago, Walmart was trying to become a bank, you know, an FDIC deposited bank, and the banking industry went ape. They were so afraid of Walmart that they shut that down. And I can understand too. I mean, you know, and now of course there are, if you go into some Walmarts across the United States, they have a branch of a bank that's actually in them. And so they're still doing that to, you know, to help their customers. Okay, so there's like a taxonomy of the retailer types, and their focus is whether you're talking about margin and turnover, whether they provide some of the basic parts of like bulk breaking, whether they do spatial convenience, delivery and waiting time, whether they do variety and assortment. I want you to note this particular chart, because when I go ahead and do the recording on Thursday or on Wednesday, this chart will be important for you to help understand, because it all falls under the classification of retailing strategies, okay? Okay. So, if we look at the retail landscape now, the big players, of course, in terms of non-store retailers are Amazon and QVC. They came from such different backgrounds. Of course, Amazon grew up with the internet. QVC has been around since the 80s, since we had the home shopping networks, and QVC is still going strong, and they're still going strong on TV as well as on the internet. And yes, you can still find a QVC on most network or, you know, like channel systems. Walmart is not just very dominant in the global, it's like the #1, okay? Walmart, I think, is 15% of all of the revenue of the top 25. You know, you talk about the strength of an Amazon at $80 to $85 billion a year. Walmart annually right now is at about $480 billion, okay? They have 6,200 stores worldwide. They employ something like 2.7 million people. In the United States, they have the highest employment next to the United States government. They have 4,500 stores in the United States. And so, yeah, Amazon is big, don't get me wrong, but don't count Walmart out of anything. And as a matter of fact, Walmart's done a great job in the last 10 years coming back to making its online presence feasible. In 2014, Walmart bought Jet.com and took the owner of Jet.com and made him the CEO or chief of operations of their internet. And he totally redesigned the Walmart website. Walmart came out with 2 years ago not needing a Prime account to be able to get free delivery. All you had to do was ask for some goods over $40. And of course, Amazon knows a good idea when they steal one. And so they did the same thing. Walmart also bought shoes.com. They own moosejaw.com, which is a big outdoor equipment one. They own the Amazon of India. I can't remember the name of it, unfortunately. And so Walmart has staked its reputation and its future both in the retail establishment and also online as well. So even in a changing landscape, they're doing quite well, okay? Now, the problem is that we don't really have a way of understanding or determining whether retail is being successful both in the online or the offline platform, because there's a blurring with omni-channel retailing. And it's difficult because the characteristics of goods that are purchased online are very different than those goods that would be purchased in stores, and people purchase those things for different reasons. And so Aldi, which is a limited goods distributor, and so if you've ever been to an Aldi, it's almost like a Dollar General in terms of the things that they have. But if you go in their online stores, they're not going to offer you things such as food. I mean, quite simply, is that's not the kinds of things that would work successfully there. All right, and so this, this fact is that consumer preferences may shift back and forth between personal in retailing versus online, but it just kind of muddies the waters, and knowing, ultimately how consumer preferences are, considering what's creating the change today, okay? Well, certainly one of the reasons is that technology is changing things. And basically right now, though, retailing has two different issues that they're having to take into account with, okay? The first is that retailing, or let's say shopping, can be considered a chore, all right? Nobody likes to go through shop. Well, let's say, and that's the part of it is that we're looking at a dichotomy here, because people look at shopping in two different ways. Some of those look at it as being a chore and a task, and visiting the grocery store or dry cleaner is just one of those burdens. However, retailing is also can be perceived as fulfilling and an entertaining experience. And this is really the focus of the mall when it existed, and then before that, the downtown shopping districts as well. Shopping became one of those things that was an enjoyable experience. And so you're caught in between these two kinds of categories about how people deal with things. And basically, how does this translate into the online channel? Well, what we do know is that using social media networks, users can research and purchase products now, just by asking for suggestions. And how to incorporate that into their systems is another challenge that retailers are having to deal with at this point. And so, how do retail establishments succeed? All right? So, retail establishments survive based upon their focus in two things, all right? Basically, success for each retailer just comes down to two basic components: buying things at a lower price and selling them for a higher price. I mean, that is the core focus, okay? And so one side is you're looking at the costs, okay? And the other side is looking at sales, all right? You want sales to go up and you want costs to go down. Sounds very simple, all right? Most organizations focus on both. It makes sense, all right? It just depends on the mix that ultimately determines all of the other strategies that are wrapped around it, okay? And so when a retailer chooses their positioning strategy, they do it with the recognition of the effects of its competitiveness and performance, okay? It can select specific cost side characteristics and specific demand side characteristics. And so what it means is how do we go about being the most efficient in our costs, and how do we increase demand, which ultimately tells us how well we do in sales, all right? Now, one of the things that I want to reiterate again is a concept that's extremely important, because we're going to come up with 3 different ideas, and all 3 of these ideas are key components for cost side strategies. And the first one I want to talk about is the concept of turnover. Now, turnover has been used a lot, and you probably have heard this in accounting, and you may have heard what has been considered the professor's ideas of how they come about with turnover. But it's easy to just think of it in this way, okay? And so I have a store, and this store is stocked with inventory, all right? And in 1 year, I want to sell every single thing in that store. Now, the reason I want to sell everything in the store is important. If I don't sell everything in the store in 1 year, it means that I start the next year buying goods, and there's still goods that I haven't been able to get off the shelf, all right? If I can achieve selling the cost of everything on my shelves in 1 year, then my turnover rate is 1. It means my entire inventory turns over in a given year. And you probably have heard the concept in accounting and in other ones, but I want to also stress to you the importance of how difficult, and I've done this over and over again, how difficult it is to be successful when you have simply too much inventory, okay? Inventory ties up liquid capital. It ties up your assets, and it makes you commit to things with the hope that those goods are going to be popular later on. Sometimes they can be incredibly good, so good that you can't keep up. I think I've talked before about the Nintendo Wii. I think that's one of the examples of when it was so good, they couldn't keep it in, all right? The bad side, if I can say it, is the concept of the last Star Wars toys, where Toys R Us sold big into those in their shelves, and the sales were so abysmal that it pulled Toys R Us down to where it is, all right? And so, you know, inventory can be great. Sorry, folks, I'm sorry whether I'm having such issues. Okay, there, now stay, okay? So the truth is that we want to have as much inventory as we can, but we don't want to have inventory long enough that the goods themselves become stale and they become a burden, okay? And so this is what turnover means. And so there are 2 types of retail systems. One's called a high service retailing system, and this is where there's a lot of commitment to the consumers, especially in services. Think of an example would be a very high priced place to get a good suit. That would be an idea. margins are higher, the turnover is lower. In other words, the numbers are lower, the suits stay there. In a low price retailing system, the opposite holds. You have low margins, but you have high inventory, and because of that need to control cost, you have minimal service levels. This is in essence what Walmart does. Walmart is very much self-service, but where they make the money is on the low margins that they have, okay? And historically, low margin, high turnover models sought high operational efficiencies so that they could pass on the savings. And so what that means is that Walmart did whatever it could to lower the overall cost of every piece of good that they put on the shelf. And that included being much more efficient at shipping and being much more efficient at ordering as well, because those are two things that drive up costs, okay? So the other way that works is, if you think about it, is you get cheaper prices of goods from Costco, but you take on the good, or you take on the costs of storage of those goods in the breaking bulk. You perform those channel functions that you do as a member of the channel, but you, in essence, become the warehouse versus Costco, okay? Okay. And so, stay still. All right. Stay still. All right. And so, that leads us to the discussion of three major components of what's called the strategic profit model. And these are that the retailers need to manage either the margins or the assets or both, okay? So I need to manage the margins, the amount of money that I make from things. I need to manage the assets that I have to sell, or I need to do both of those together. And so that brings us to three concepts. Margins, asset turnover, and financial leverage. Okay. And so in the sense that we're using here, margins comes down to the ratio of profits to sales. The ratio of profit to sales. And so what this would be is net profit over net sales. And so, to give you an example, if my net sales are $100,000, but I sell $100,000 and my net profit is $10,000, okay? What that means is that my ratio is 10%, okay? It means I make 10% margin. Now, if I look at an efficiency or how well I do inventory, and let's say I keep my inventory cost to the bone, instead of that $100,000 in net sales, let's say I make $40,000 because I've been real good with buying products that cost less. Well, now all of a sudden this margin is 40%. And so what the margin says is it's a measuring of how well you're managing, okay? And realize, of course, this is only one measurement, because of course, if the margins are good, however, you're not selling, then in essence, no matter how good the margins are, it doesn't put itself to success, okay? The next is asset turnover, and this captures the retailer's efficiency. This captures the retailer's efficiency in creating revenue. In relation to assets. In relation to assets. And so the faster the turnover you have, the higher the numbers, the better. And so what this is net sales divided by total assets. And if this total asset number is lower, if the total asset number is lower, it means that the turnover is higher. You're having to spend less money to make money, and that's a good thing, okay? And so margins give you an idea of how well you're doing in terms of sales. Asset turnover gives you an idea of how efficient you are at making money on what you buy. And then the last is financial leverage, and this is total assets to net worth. And this is kind of a different one because the leverage basically says how much in debt are you in order to make money. And so the lower this number is, actually the better you are. If your assets are low and your net worth is high, it means you have liquidity, all right, that you're in a good shape. If this number is around 30%, it means that only 30% of your liquidity is tied up into inventory. If this number is 70%, then you're in a danger zone, okay? It's what's called the quick ratio. If you ever get into, I'm sure you're gonna get into finance or accounting or one of the other things. And basically it means, do you have the money to pay if every bill came due at the same moment, all right? And so in retail positioning strategies, when it comes down to what makes successful margin is your ability to measure how well your margins are doing, how well you're doing on asset turnover, and then how low is your financial leverage. And if you have these three things going for you, then you've got a lot, okay? Okay, because I stopped here in the other class, we're gonna stop here now. And so on Wednesday, knock on wood again, I hope to have this chapter up, and I will hope to see you on next Tuesday. So have a good weekend, take off, and talk to you later, okay?
All right, have a good one.
You too, take care.
Dr. Shao,
Yes,
a quick question for you.
go right ahead.
I was the one that emailed you about the paper.
Yes,
You said that you pushed the date to the 13th of this month, correct?
that is correct.
Okay. And what did you say about the groups? You said you was going to resend them?
They should have been sent already. You should have gotten an email from it. Check and see if your account is trapping them in any way or another. Is this John, by the way?
No, this is Emery.
Okay, excuse me, Emery. I had another
Oh,
one.
you're fine. You're fine. Let me log on and make sure, because, see, I didn't get the last one, so I had no idea that you sent them out.
No, it's quite all right, and I'm not sure what's happening. I do know this, is that sometimes that Gmail can be real persnickety about trapping things. So
Yeah.
check your spam filter and see if it's there, because I've sent now 3 emails out. Email me please this afternoon if you haven't gotten it. Okay.
Okay. And how do you check the spam filter? I'm trying to see.
Yeah, Just look under, if you're in Gmail, just look under spam, okay? Have a good one.
All right, thank you.
So, yeah, just go ahead and check there, Emery, okay?
Okay. And if not, I'll email you and just respond to my email.
Yes, yes, and I will respond directly to your email too.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Everybody have a good one.